Agnes, good morning. Okay, maybe once you're able to hear us, you can say hi to us. Let's see who else has joined in. Okay. All right, so I think we can start. I can see Daniel has joined also. Daniel, good morning. Morning, Daniel. If you can hear us, you can wave, you can say hi, you can just to let us know that you're there, that you've joined us this morning for this session on MBO.
Morning, Mr.
Okay.
Everyone.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
All right.
Sorry,
Welcome.
I just joined you.
Okay.
Before you started.
No problem. We are glad that you've joined.
Okay, thank you.
There is somebody here, Manpower Services. I don't know who that is. Perhaps if you've joined as Manpower Services, kindly say hi to us. Then we have Ismail. I think Ismail has also joined us. Ismail, welcome. Okay, I think there's someone from Manpower Services. If you can hear us, kindly say hi to the rest of the professionals here.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Winnie. I work with Manpower Services and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, welcome, Winnie.
Asante.
Good. Ismail, Daniel, I think the rest we've had. The rest, I think people are still logging in. But I think nonetheless, we would, I think we will start so that the rest can join us in the interest of time. I know that people who logged in at exactly 8:32. So I think like 10 minutes has been enough for other people to join in. Good. So I think as a start, and normally as a culture, we will start with a word of prayer. And I would request one of us to lead us in a short prayer before we start on the engagements of this training. So any volunteer kindly? Any volunteer for a prayer? Okay, Anne.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we come before you this morning. We thank you, Lord, that this is the day that you have made. Thank you, Lord, even for this class. Thank you for my colleagues and the facilitator. We pray that you will bless us and reach us, oh God, that we may be able to learn and even develop. And therefore, we commit even the entire program to you, trusting in you that it shall be well with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you, Anne, for the, starting as the day with the word of prayer. It is very important that we thank God for whatever blessings. Just being alive is worth saying thank you, because things happen and life is very, very key to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think as I said, we will start. I know there are people who have joined in today. I don't know whether I think Winnie, this is your first day, isn't it? Why? Because I don't remember you yesterday.
Yes, I was unable to join yesterday.
Okay. All right. Then I think there's also Anne.
Yeah, very true. I wasn't in yesterday.
Yes. Karibu sana. So you are late, but not very late. As the saying goes, better late than never. But I believe you'll also be able to follow this conversation on YouTube and also in the SHRP platform. You're able to follow it and also just to see how the conversations have been for the last 2 days. So today, our focus will be on key main areas. But before that, I think I'll just give a summary of what we discussed yesterday. And for the interest of those also who have joined today, I think we've had quite a lot that we've looked at from day one when we were looking at what is MBO, or the management by objective, who came up with this aspect. What was the motivation behind that? Because any idea, any policy, or even any theory is usually motivated by something. And we learned that Peter Drucker was the proponent of management by objective. And he was driven by the aspect of ensuring that you have a more holistic approach to measuring and also managing the progress of the organization. And after that, we've had also other scholars who have come in to just beef up his ideology on how well can management by objective be embedded into the organization. We also looked at coming up with objectives with regard to the normal component of SMART, like what is a SMART objective? How do you cascade the SMART objectives into other work plans within the department, the plans, the self-development plans for the person, and how do we ensure that we have that alignment? Because we realize that if there is lack of alignment, that's when we have problems of not attaining their objectives, or at times people resisting the change, and at times people not just being motivated to do something. The commitment level becomes limited because people do not understand clearly what is expected of them. Also, we delved into the aspect of the importance of participatory decision-making. And when you look at management by objective, it entirely zeroes in on the need to have a joint conversation between the management and also the staff, or between the supervisor and the staff, so that from the onset, they understand what sort of activities they need to put together, what sort of support, what sort of working relationships they need to have, so that at the end, they're able now to collectively achieve the objectives that have been set by the organization. Then also we looked at the prerequisites for an effective management by objective. What are these prerequisites? It's just like, what are these building blocks for any management by objective to be successful, or what makes it to be strong, and in the absence of that, then it limits the objectivity or the effectiveness of the same. Then also we looked at the pillars of this process of MBO, or what we call the constituent processes. Generally, what informs this process of management by objective. And also we also looked at who can utilize management by objective. And I think that's a point we had a conversation and people asking, I remember there's one HR professional was asking, then what is the difference between management by objective and the balanced scorecard? And I think we had so many responses towards that. Then there was also the question on what is the difference between the normal performance appraisal and the management by objective, considering that management by objective is also a method of appraisal. But then what is one a subset of the other? What makes the two to gel, or how can we gel them so that they give us the expected outcome? Then I think also we looked at the strategies for making MBO effective. Then we also looked at the key result areas. What are the key result areas that you as a professional or any other individual may want to incorporate in the structure so that it enables them to keep pace with happenings within work. But generally, our emphasis, I think, for the last 2 days has been how effective can we make our objectives to be realized, and how do we align these objectives so that people do not feel like they're not aware of what is happening. And there's one thing that has been recurring every day, and that has been educating and training people in communication. And we say that communication is very, very imperative because many policies, many ideas have failed, not because they are bad, but because there was no effective communication or there was no proper communication. And in that case, then people feel that they are being coerced into adopting certain things that are not, according to them, that they have not been consulted, or according to them, they don't understand what is the importance of the same. And according to them, these are ideas that may not necessarily contribute to their success. So those are some of the areas that we looked at. And that's what informs the discussion now for this morning, where now we want to focus now on the aspects of what are these key characteristics of managing by objectives, then also the steps of implementation. So when you set up the management by objective, how do you ensure that you improve it or you make it to feel part of the structure of the performance management system? And how do we ensure that all these steps are aligned from the first point up to the last point? Then of course, we'll end up by looking at also the challenges, because anything that has positives will definitely have its own challenges. And therefore, we'll also be able to understand what are these challenges that come with the implementation of management by objective. So generally, that's the overview of what the discussion has been, ladies and gentlemen. And now allow me now to move to today's topic or today's discussions. Starting with the features. What are the features of MBO? So we'll be looking at these three areas: features of MBO, the steps, and the challenges. Now, when we look at the features, a feature is normally a characteristic or some sort of, sometimes we call it as a characteristic or a component or anything that makes us to understand a concept. So when you look at the management by objective, one of the key features is a philosophy. That MBO is a philosophy. And what is a philosophy? A philosophy generally is a study of a discipline that makes us to believe something or to understand something. It's more of an understanding of something, like when you talk about understanding a wisdom, or you want to be wise. You want to, in philosophy, we also talk about philosophizing. Are we able to philosophize something? And you had people coming up with their own interpretation of things. And they usually attribute that to a philosophy. They say that that's my philosophy. This is my philosophy. That's what my mind, or that's what my belief is. So the main reason behind interpreting certain things in a particular way is informed by the philosophy that somebody holds. And it has been used generally in the academic spheres, because people who have studied to some level, for example, you've seen people having Master of Philosophy in accounting, Master of Philosophy in science. Others have, we have this PhD. So PhD, so those are doctorate people. So we are looking at Doctor of Philosophy. So the main reason behind having that philosophy in it is the aspect that this is somebody who has interpreted, challenged the different reasoning or point of views in that particular field, and now they are able now to come up with a particular sort of understanding. So it's like you've analyzed, why do people sleep at night? Then somebody else will say, I also want to establish why is it that if you sleep during the day, vis-a-vis during the night, you find that the body will not respond effectively. So in philosophizing that, somebody will say, I think when you sleep during the night, you tend to have a mind that is more concentrated, but during the day, there are so many disruptions, and because of that, then you're not able to sleep well. At the same time, somebody can just come up with a philosophy and say, I think it's because rarely will you find somebody sleeping when outside is bright, okay? Some people will not sleep even when the lights are on. And when you ask them, they'll say, I just feel that I'm comfortable not having the lights on. Others would say that they feel comfortable and have the lights on for them to sleep. So all those are philosophies. And philosophies are also derived from certain myths and beliefs. And I know if today I ask you about the different philosophies that you have, some of them will be very interesting because of, could be the experience you've been in or just the way things have been in your life. So you tend now to hold a particular belief onto something or something about something. So management by objective is a philosophy in itself. And in this case, we refer to it as a philosophy of management. So it's very significant that we understand what this philosophy of management entails, because it also focuses on and stresses upon what has to be achieved and not upon how to achieve it. It's all about what has to be achieved. So if we agree that this year, your achievement in relation to your, let's say your revenue, let's say we are actually trying to evaluate you on revenue. From last year, maybe your revenue was at, or your revenue was at 5 million. Now you're looking at 10 million, or you've issued out loans worth 50 million. This year you have to be 60 million. So just looking at what is it that you need to achieve. But when it comes to how, it now depends on your innovation. It now depends on how creative you become to achieve that. So in this case then, management by objective will only focus on your achievement. So we'll be looking at what you've achieved. And therefore the philosophy here will be that the end will justify the means. So we don't care how you go to that point, but our main emphasis will be, have you achieved the target? Have you achieved what we had set together as a team or as an individual? So that's now on this philosophy. So therefore, in understanding why it's a philosophy is because it guides the organization to get the best out of the available resources in order to achieve the set objectives. So it's just a philosophy of management because it's based upon a concept of action, behavior, and motivation. So you look at the action, behavior, and the motivation. This one is, if you look at the goal setting theory in organizational behavior, goal setting theory sits squarely in this concept of MBO. Because you're looking at the goal setting, that means that the goal that you're targeting is what informs your actions, is what informs your behavior, and therefore is what justifies the outcome. So essentially, that's the understanding of why MBO is a philosophy. So you look at what you are looking at to achieve, and you've seen that even in normal life. So somebody will change their behavior, they'll start becoming so good, or they change their behavior because there is something they're looking at. Nowadays in politics, you hear people saying that if you hear people calling you Mheshimiwa, or they call you chairman, that means there's something that they're looking at. So for you to get excited and say that maybe on the ground, this is what people are saying, on the ground, I'm the most popular person. But these people are they're looking at you, so they have branded you that chairman position because they know that once they call you chairman, you get excited and you can always share some of the goodies that you have. So in that concept, they are utilizing this as a philosophy to entice you into a particular action. So you'll behave in a particular manner and you'll be motivated now to keep entertaining them and talking to them because it will make them, or it makes you to feel excited on the same. So that's where this element of philosophy gets in. So it's therefore then we can say that MBO is applied both to managers and subordinates. It can be applied in any type and size of of the organization, and also it can be applied in all levels of the organization. Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, the second feature is MBO is a universal management tool. Universal management tool. So it's a universal tool, definitely. Then it has some relationship with every management technique prevalent in the organization. So if you look at the objectives must be inclined towards a reward process. The objectives must be inclined towards a training process. The objectives must also be inclined towards the kind of people that you bring on board. Because whenever we recruit, we are recruiting bearing in mind that we want somebody to come and execute the following. So that those components of the execution are what determines the type of person that we want to bring on board. So in this case, then the existence of that personal description is what informs this, and therefore MBO becomes a universal management tool. What we experience nowadays is that you find that from the universal management tool, then we have our own different tools that we have customized to fit the needs of the business. So depending on the size of the organization, then we tend now to borrow heavily from the MBO, so that now we determine or we chart the way forward for our different institutions. So MBO provides a trigger that will drive and improve the relevance and usefulness of existing techniques in the organization. When you talk about being a trigger, means that if we clearly define the objectives for ourselves and also for the business, then it means that through the alignment, then we're able to see how relevant is this activity, how relevant is this task to the overall achievement of my objectives and also the department and also the organization. So by having that in mind, then we determine how useful are the different, so that we bring in now the aspect of the contribution, how useful are the different levels of the organization in tandem with the top level expectations of the corporate expectation. That's why MBO is a universal management tool as another feature. So it's a unified application of a number of principles and techniques, and also it works as a mixing or integrating device. It is also simple and technical and an operational management approach. So it's not very technical, because if you look at its characteristics, it's more of your knowledge of what is expected. Then you now try to mold these into your situation. So in addition, MBO can be applied both managers and subordinates. It also serves a value management tool for profit as well as non-profit organizations. And also it can be applied at different levels of the organization. The third characteristic is it acts as a comprehensive system approach. It acts as a comprehensive system approach. So in an organization, when this MBO is implemented, it has to be a comprehensive system. What do you mean by comprehensive? Comprehensive tends to point out the different or the significant activities, the significant contributions, the significant resources within the organization, and how these different subsystems need to be integrated so that they achieve the holistic or the general objective of the organization. So this aspect of acting as a comprehensive system is because it takes into consideration both economic and human aspects of the organization, and also applied both to managers and subordinates. It can also be applied to any business, regardless of the size or the type. Because when you talk about non-profit making, as well as profit making, if we talk about the small enterprises, or you're looking at the big multinational companies, all those companies can utilize this MBO in their different contexts. So you look at your context, then you look at how can I align these? How do I adopt some of these characteristics to enable me move forward with the organization? And this kind of alignment is where we call it as the best fit. So you're looking at what is it that can ensure that these activities or these processes fit into the needs of my business. In HR, we normally talk about this best fit, and also we have the best practice. So at times, we may not necessarily go for the best practice, because best practice entails that, it's like copying. Yeah? You're copying how others are doing exactly as they are doing it. I may wear this coat, it fits me very well, but if you wear it, it will not fit you. That's when we're engaging in best practice, where you say, I have to go for a similar coat like what this person is putting on. Or you decide that because a particular organization is giving people bonuses, I also do the same. With the premise that if you give them the bonus, they'll be excited, they'll be motivated, they'll be retained. But you find that you lose out because you've not understood the context within which that bonus for that particular organization is being effected. So you must dig down and look at, in my organization, instead of me going for the bonus because maybe my business will not be able to accommodate this, what other incentives can I adopt? So that's where now you bring in the issue of trying to integrate what can fit your organization. And that's why we're bringing in this aspect of that MBO can be applied in any type and size of the organization. So it's just the element of borrowing or trying to see how a particular process or procedure can be, it's more you manipulate it. You manipulate it in such a way that it tends to fit in the structure of the organization. So it can also be applied at all levels of the organization and functional areas of the organization, and therefore it can be effective in an organization when it's understood by all as a comprehensive system. So we're not looking at it as a one-off system, but it's comprehensive, meaning it rotates around all other subsystems within the organization. And if one subsystem fails or it does not support the rest, then it will definitely now have a spiral effect on the overall achievement. It's therefore crucial that everyone understands that MBO is a way of managing and not an addition to the managerial job. It's a way of managing and not an addition to the managerial job. Now, this concept, every time people look at it, they look at it as if it's a very abstract concept. It's on its own, failing to know that everything that we do is actually driven by the objectives. Whenever we talk about the vision, every time you are reminded that our vision of this company is to be the most, or to provide customer satisfaction, or to have, to be known as a market leader. Already, that's a drive. That is a vision that we must now look at what are these mission statements and objectives that we need to put in place to ensure that we drive ourselves to the next level. So we'll be looking at who is the champion of this idea, and who are the people that are working together with who are the team members, ideally, that will enable now us to move to the next level. So that's essentially why we're saying that it's a way of managing and not an addition to the managerial job. Number four feature is that MBO is an approach. It's an approach to management. Now, approach means there are various tools to techniques that are used in order to achieve a particular objective. So various tools and techniques can be used to achieve that. So MBO is an approach because for us to achieve these objectives, we have to look at the different techniques of management. It also improves the relevance and usefulness of existing techniques in the organization. Relevance and usefulness. Relevance and usefulness. Those are terms that we need to be very, very cautious on, because they are the building blocks for this approach. So MBO is a unified application of a number of principles and techniques, and also it works as a mixing or integrating device. I think that one we've already mentioned, and it focuses on various principles and techniques of planning and control that can be applied to and used in organization to help it achieves organization objectives for growth. So when you look at mixing, that's where I brought in the issue of you identifying a particular principle and saying, this principle gels well with our business. This other principle does not, because if you introduce it, it will conflict with our culture. It will conflict with some of our existing, maybe the strategic plan does not encompass that. So that way then, you're picking out specific components that will resonate well with your business, then you put them into the execution line. So that way then you're mixing and integrating. That's where the management by objective is. But on the same point, remember on the day one, when we were talking about what is this MBO, we said that MBO, it gives that holistic approach to the performance of the organization. It is something that is continuous. That means you keep on finding out, monitoring the progress, coming up with the remedial action, rewarding, and at the same time also you keep on revising some of the approaches that you're doing. So it's more of, it gives that holistic approach now to ensuring that performance aspects are kept or they're checked throughout. Then another characteristic or another feature is that MBO is used for determination of organizational and individual goals. Now, how do you determine organizational and individual goals? Remember, we say that one of the key principles of MBO is that it has to be joint. We are looking at participatory. So every time you are monitoring your progress and you are reviewing some of the decisions that you've taken, that's the point where now you're doing what? You're determining what other goals can you look at. So any moment we come to the end and we say, okay, I think you've excelled in this objective. This one, it had challenges. So you'll be looking at what was the reason behind you not achieving these objectives. Could it be a technical issue? Could it be a competence issue? Could it be that you didn't have the right resources? So once you establish, if the reasons are beyond your control, or maybe it was an over, sometimes we set objectives that we cannot achieve. And that's where I was asking professionals yesterday that every time you look at the targets you've set or the components that you're using in your appraisal, ask yourself, are they smart? Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable? Are they realistic? Are they time bound? So once you've satisfied that that particular objective meets those requirements, then you're good to go. That means at no point will you find yourself now guessing and thinking, what did we intend to get in this? What other options can we have in place of this? So that's what it's very, very key when it comes to understanding. And in this case, then it determines the goals of the organization and also the individual, because after that consultation, that's when you'll be saying, okay, if our department, this is our target, this is our goal, then what will be my contribution towards the same? So overall, if we've succeeded, then we'll also come up with another goal. If we've not succeeded, then we revise the goal so that we are now able to do it, to achieve it in a more realistic and specific way. So that's what informs this feature of it being a determinant of organizational and individual goals, because there has to be that mutual discussion, there has to be that consultation, and ideally now everyone will be alive to what is expected of them. They'll be alive to what sort of challenges do they anticipate and how well can they navigate those challenges, because at no point will you find that life is just as easy as it is. There is this Murphy's philosophy that says that if you find that things are working smoothly, then there's a problem. If everything is just smooth, then you must sense that there's something wrong in this, because you must at any given time face some particular challenge, because challenges are what will make you now to change tact, and also they'll make you now to also look at the results better, or you also look at what is lays ahead of you in that case. So MBO managers or superiors and the subordinates discuss together the jointly determined common objectives for the organization. So in this case, as they do that jointly, then they're also able to identify individuals' areas of work and responsibility. And every time we have this kind of conversation, then it makes the person taking part into it to own the process. Unlike a situation whereby the drafters of these activities have not included the person that is supposed to play part. So in that case, then it becomes so difficult for me to take up a responsibility which I was not alive to. But the moment I've taken part, and that has happened even in terms of managing change. Anytime you want to manage change, you just ensure that you consult people, just share the communication with them. Sharing the communication is already a step towards getting a buy-in. So somebody may not resist it outrightly, but whenever they have seen that communication, now they'll feel guilty because they'll not want to, of course, they will not have read it. They will not have read the communication, but because they saw the communication, but they didn't read it, it already gives them that guilt that they cannot oppose it because one, they don't understand the content of the communication. But in the event that you missed out to communicate to them, my friend, you have to be ready for a lot of fireworks. People will resist, they will call you names, they will say, you people, you don't communicate, you don't consult and all that. So the first step is to ensure that that joint understanding and discussion is critical. It forms a basis for any success. It forms a basis for any decision-making that will be able to see the light when it comes to implementation. So those are the main aspects of it. Then MBO also has several uses, and I think this one, we may look at it in terms of how it can be applied at the individual level, how it can be applied at the holistic or the strategic level of the organization, how it can be used to motivate people, because we said once we align it, then I'll know that this is what I need to achieve. So I get driven by that. And by doing that, then I'm able to drive myself to the next level. So because it gives a multiplicity of users, then that's why we have this feature of it being having several users. So some of the systems that can be integrated into the MBO process are budgeting, management development programs, performance appraisals, organizational change programs, design of organizational structures. So that will also involve this MBO. So in addition, also MBO stresses on participatory set objectives. It stresses on participatory set objectives. So by stressing on participatory set objectives, it means that it wants the objectives being done in a participatory manner. It means that objectives are set through thorough discussions between the superior and the subordinates. I think this is an area that I've already talked about. And as I've said, and I will repeat it, you cannot achieve, or you cannot have people to buy into your idea if you've not involved them, or they don't understand what sort of procedure are you looking at. And also, even if you want to use a particular approach where you say now you don't have time to consult, but as I said, there's that element of communicating, just center communication. That communication in itself can act as participatory, and people read it. So even if they have not understood and they feel like they want to ask questions, they can even ask questions informally. So also the objectives that are set are smart objectives, and hence such objectives are tangible, verifiable, and measurable. In fact, as we say that this feature of MBO setting that is both measurable and participatory has made MBO one of the most popular approaches in both management theory and practice. Another feature is that MBO is a performance appraisal and review. It's a performance appraisal and review. And how is it a performance appraisal and review? Because it aims to evaluate or assess or rate or judge the individual's performance and relate the individual's performance to the organization. Somebody was talking about the balance scorecard yesterday. And you'll agree with me that now balance scorecard being a tool, you find that it also incorporates a lot of this MBO. Because every time you rate yourself in that, in the system, it automatically shows your contribution towards the whole organization. It also shows, because as you allocate the different weights to your particular task or your particular target, then overall, what is the contribution to the department or to the team? And overall, what is your contribution to the organization? And once we have this analytics, then it enables us to make very, very strategic decisions within the organization. And in any case, you've heard of, or nowadays there has been a debate on why HR needs to be sitting at the strategic level of the organization. It's because initially people are perceiving HR as more of administrative. But now when you look at such, if you are to make such decisions that are strategic, then you need to come up with dashboards that will show how the performance has been in relation to the individuals. So you have the percentages, you have the narratives against it, and now it projects on the decisions that you need to take as an organization. And that's where we've been challenging ourselves as professionals, that we need now to be more analytical. When you do the analytics, when you have the metrics and now you translate them into analytics, then what sort of decisions do you intend to take? So that becomes a very crucial component when we advocate for HR playing a strategic role, because you can't be strategic if you are not able to make decisions based on figures that you have derived. So it's very crucial that if you want to move to that level, then you must have this knowledge and skill where now you can sit, you can project, and you can argue out and say, if we are looking at, if you track the performance of staff A, staff B, staff C, then we're able to show that this person has been improving performance at a rate of 15% for the last 2 years. Another one maybe has been declining. Another one has been improving by 30%. So that trajectory is able now to inform you to make certain decisions. You're now able to project that if this trend continues, then the highest this person can get to is this. If this trend continues, then this person will completely lose track on performance. And that's where now the analytics now inform the strategic decisions that we've always talked about. So in this way, then MBO acts as a useful tool for performance review and appraisals. And of course, as we identify the performance levels of the individuals, then we're able to determine the gap between the expected and the actual. And as we do that, then we are able now to provide the remedies for the individual. If you've not performed to the expectation, then what will be the discussion? After we discuss, then we'll tell you, in this performance level, what actions can we take? How do we take this action so that we overcome this gap that we've already identified from the performance appraisal and review? So based on that, then we are able now to set new objectives. And also we are able to identify your level of strength. We're able to identify your level of weaknesses and the action items that we need to take to ensure that we minimize the occurrence, or we minimize your performance challenges that you have. Another characteristic is that MBO is a top-down or bottom-up approach in results management. So it's a both top-down and or bottom-up approach, which will direct organization towards the optimal use of resources such as human resources, financial resources, etc. So MBO is a systematic and practical tool and techniques that allows organizations management to gain maximum results or productivity from its available resources. At the same time, it gives subordinates a lot of freedom to act on their own and make innovative and creative decisions on their own. As I said, once you have your target, it's upon you now to chart the way forward. How would you achieve? How do you move to that point? We'll not tell you how to go about it, because eventually we'll be asking you, okay, did you achieve this? You did not achieve. Why didn't you achieve that? So based on this, then it's upon you now to be more innovative and creative to ensure that you get your results right. yesterday I was giving that example of people who are competing on commissions, others competing on bonuses and all that. And I said, people devise so many ways of ensuring that they hit their targets. So regardless of what sort of ways they will use, now it will depend on the individual and also generally on how others feel about that. So MBO also provides guidelines for appropriate systems. Guidelines for appropriate system. So when you talk about a guideline, that means it gives the key principles based on the objectives that have been set towards what people need to take part in. So that guide, as we said, once you've already identified the objectives and how and what needs to be achieved, then those, as you work, you're working within that framework. So those are now the guidelines on how the system that will support this need to be embedded. It also helps to provide a proper set of guidelines for establishing appropriate systems and procedures in an organization that proactively help to achieve the results. So such guidelines may be provided by MBO program in terms of proper resource allocation, delegation of authority, procedures, protocols for getting the tasks done, etc. Those are some of the areas that will enable this to be achieved. In the program, MBO is measured based on the achievement of objectives. I think that's has been a very common component when it comes to MBO. So we're looking at the objectives that have to be achieved. So it helps to provide guidelines for having proper rewards and punishment system for achievement of objectives. So if you don't perform, what are the repercussions? If you perform, what are the rewards that awaits you? So depending on the various reward systems and how the MBO program has been structured, that's why now it gives that guide on what sort of reward system, what sort of punishment system that can be taken in the event that people do not meet the objectives as stated. So that is generally on the features of the MBO. Unless if there's any question or any comment up to that point, if there's none, then I'll be moving to the next subtopic, which is the steps of the process of MBO, which will be looking at them also comprehensively, just to get to know what sort of steps will make the MBO to be as effective as is possible. So that is on the different aspects of features. So I now want us to look at the steps of the process of MBO. So as we start this, it's important that we note that MBO may vary greatly from one organization to another. This is because also different organizations have different structures, they have different designs, they have different objectives, they have different needs, and also the implementation process may vary from one organization to another, the capacity, the financial, the human resource. So all those dynamics are the ones that will also have an impact on how the MBO program is embedded. Just the same way, your appraisal tool, I may not adopt your appraisal tool in our organization because our organization is completely different. But then I may not entirely throw it away, but what I can do is I can look at certain components that may be applicable in my organization, then I adapt them in the organization. So that's ideally also an area that we will be looking at when we're looking at also how do we introduce this MBO. In addition, the methods and approaches that managers may adopt also will be different from one program to another, because also of emphasis. There are companies that have a higher percentage emphasis on profit, others high percentage emphasis on differentiation, others high percentage emphasis on maybe generally market share and all that. So that variation is what informs how the MBO program will be decided. I think there's a hand. Let's see. So like somebody raised their hand. Okay. Let's see if we have some people that require to be added. Okay, so I was saying that the aspect of Mary raised her hand. Let's see where Mary is. Yes, Mary. Mary, I can see your hand is up.
Sorry, I think it was accidental.
Okay, okay. No worries, no worries. Okay. Well, so I was saying that towards this end of implementing this MBO, you find that the different needs of the organization will play a key role in enhancing the effectiveness, or even sometimes what will make it to not to achieve could be also the challenge with regard to the size, the resources that are available, and the culture of that organization. Okay. So it will be important that if you are designing this MBO program, then you have to carry out your in-depth analysis of the business, look at how each of the different levels of the organization will play part into that program, look at who will be accountable for what results, and look at how individuals will be able to be webbed into this whole program. So the question is, how do you, sometimes you ask yourself, then where is this MBO? Is it, if you look at the MBO, then you look at the functional needs. Okay, let me add Mary to the panelists. Okay, I think I've added you. Good. Yeah, so I was giving that example that just like any other process, just like any other policy, you realize that it may not be a one-fit-all program, or it may not be a one-fit-all system. So it will be entirely dependent on the person who wants to introduce it, or the organization, to have an analysis of what are the needs of the organization, so that you're able now to customize it to fit the needs of your business. So that's where it will be very, very crucial that you don't necessarily have to adopt a practice as it is holistically, but you look at your needs, you look at the challenges, you look at your financials. This explains the reasons why we have disparities in even in payment. Why do you think you may be a HR assistant in one organization and your scale of salary is twice and the salary of another HR manager in another organization? Is because of also the culture and also the structure, the reward system of that organization. So the same way, so you cannot come and tell this company that is paying a HR officer or manager, let's say 80,000 or 100,000, and think that they will also adopt another approach from another company that is paying a HR manager 200,000 or 300,000. Or you cannot compare that with another company that's paying a HR officer 40,000 shillings, yet you want them to adopt a reward system of 100,000. So that variation is definitely what also informs the kind of program that the company will adopt. So different companies have different strategic directions. So based on your strategic plan, that's where now you'd be able to come up with procedures and policies or programs that will inform your achievement of your strategic plan. So it becomes like a guiding principle towards these other operational programs that you need to bring on board in this particular case. So the steps of this process of MBO includes the following. 1, determination of objectives, identification of key result areas, that's the second step. Thirdly, we are looking at determining the subordinates objectives. Then we are looking at organizational structure. How do you review it, revise it? Matching objectives. Then we are looking at conducting periodic progress reviews. Then you're doing your appraisals and providing feedback. So these steps, you can look at them in detail as follows. On determination of objectives, this is where you're setting objectives. So at the individual level and also the supervisor level, you look at them and say, these are the objectives that we've set for this particular year. Now, these objectives, there are those that have to be attained in the short term, others in the long term, others you have to attain them within the period of time. So you'll have indicated the timelines for each one of them. And when the timelines have been attained, then you're able now to establish whether they have been achieved or not achieved, then what are the reasons behind the achievement or non-achievement. So these objectives are established for the organization and for various positions at all levels. And they play a very crucial role in success, because without clear objectives, no individual, team, or organization can perform effectively and efficiently. So one of the important criteria to keep in mind in the scope of is the scope of measuring it. So you have to say, this objective, how will you going to measure? Because as I've said before, all the objectives must fulfill the SMART objectives. They must fulfill the SMART objectives, because if they're not SMART, then you are not able to measure them. From being specific, they must be measurable. How are you going to measure them? What scope are you looking at? So the objectives should be defined in such a way that they give clear idea about what is expected from an individual, and also gives direction to the individual to contribute and perform for the achievement of the objectives. Hence, the MBO will mandate the objective should always be established by adopting a participatory approach. I think that's what we've already said. This participatory approach is the overall, will also link to the overall management objectives, and expectations should be kept in mind with the people who are doing that. So when we set objectives, do you set objectives because you can do them, or you set objectives to challenge your status? Quite often, people set objectives that they can achieve. But in some cases, which we advocate for, is that you should only set an objective that challenges the status. Okay? Let it challenge your status. You know, it's just like when you've been, when I ask you, from the time you were born up to now, there are so many things that you've tried to change, and that's part of life. You cannot living the same way you lived 10 years ago. There has to be some change. The kind of decision that you make now may not be necessarily the same as the ones you made 10 years ago. Why? You keep changing it because of the needs. As I've given, usually I give this example of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that our needs keep on changing, and therefore, every year, you find that your need keeps on changing. And if the needs are keeping on changing, that means even your approach to life has to change. There's no way your needs will keep on changing, then your approach is the same classical approach to things. So the changes have to be necessitated by also your thinking, your level of understanding, and also your decision making has to change to resonate with the current situation at hand. So from different studies, I found that setting of objectives can be done easily and more effectively by gathering inputs from intelligent superiors, by practice, and by joint team effort on the part of subordinates. So we need to ensure that this joint practice and joint team effort is what informs the setting of these objectives. So the set objectives should be falsifiable or verifiable. They should be falsifiable or verifiable. They should also show the time period within which they are to be achieved, show the related costs involved, show the quality and quantity related aspects of the expected achievements. They should also promote both personal and professional growth and development of individuals. They also need to be clearly and properly communicated to all who are concerned. Then also they should be coordinated short-term objectives to medium and long-term. I think that's what I've also mentioned. The objectives should also value views of individuals expected to contribute in the achievement of objectives at the time of setting objectives. Now, the second step is identification of key result areas. And we've been discussing this from Monday on what are the key result areas. And we say that key result areas relate to what are these aspects that are particular to your job or to your tasks. Those are the ones that will inform how are we going to set objectives to meet those needs of your work. So you may have to go back to your job description to look at what are these goals or the roles, the responsibilities. But then the onus would be upon you now to translate that into measurable terms. How do you have these measurable action items that can enable us now to achieve the goals that are stated in a job description? And usually when you go back to that, then you find that it makes it easier for you to show that this person, we hired this person for these roles, and these are so far the milestones towards achieving the same. But what we've been witnessing at times is when you look at the appraisal completely talks about different things from the job description. And at times you ask people then, how come your job description has 12 responsibilities and roles? But if you ask maybe one of them, how have you been progressing on this? They have no idea, because some of those things were just lifted and put there. And now when it comes to actualization, you find that people are just having a job description of 12 aspects, but now they have another objectives that are not related in any way to that. But in most cases, efforts have been made to ensure that you put these targets or objectives in tandem with the job description. But now translating, at times people find it so difficult to translate that. And that needs a lot of training and guidance from the superiors or from the managers or the supervisors in this perspective. So identification of these key areas is done on the basis of premises of organization objectives and planning. And these expectations of the various stakeholders, as well as priorities for organizational performance, will help to identify the key performance areas, to help to identify those key performance areas. So the KRS should show the perspective of the top management for the future and the current state of health of the organization. This one entirely is reflecting on the vision of the company. How many of us know our vision? I don't. You knew the vision because when you are applying for the job, I'm sure that's the time you crammed the vision of that organization, because you knew if they ask me this question, I'll definitely excel. So you knew that vision. But a few years down the line, if you ask you about the vision, you may start having to ask or to check on some of the documents for you to get to understand what happens to it. So that means your key result areas are not aligned to the vision of the organization. So as I've said, the same way objectives may vary from one organization to another is the same way the key result areas will also not be the same in every organization. So they will vary depending also on the purpose, depending also on the structure, depending also on the leadership and management of the organization. So that variation will always have to be accommodated, because you can't have a one-fit-all situation. So these KRAs are in the areas in reference to which organizational health may be measured or appraised. Some of the examples of the key areas or result areas are profitability, for example, market standing, innovation, productivity, etc. Those could be the key result areas. So if you go back to yourself, you look at your organization, then you look at what are the key result areas that I'm always assessed on. Do they include any of these? Do they include the 4 plus others that your organization has included? That's how you identify these the key result areas. Number 3, determining subordinate objectives. Determining subordinate objectives. So the third step of MBO is to determine subordinate objectives. And these you can understand that all organization objectives are attained only through its employees. So the company exists because of employees, and therefore to achieve what the organization is looking at, it has to be achieved through people. So human resource becomes very pertinent to the organization. You can't have an organization without the people, because it's actually the people that come up with the systems, it's the people that come up with the policies, it's the people that come up with even that strategic plan. So they have to drive it. Hence, each and every employee must be aware of the advance about what he expects to achieve. It has to be clear in your mind. It has to be part of your DNA. It has to be part of your energy. So each subordinate and the manager should discuss and consult with each other in order to set the objectives that are particular to the subordinate. So management objective being a collective responsibility, it then calls for identifying the individual contributions to the whole achievement. I think yesterday I gave that example of a soccer team, and I said a soccer team has 11 players. If these 11 players are not playing in harmony, then the team will not win. But if they play in harmony, that's when you will say that that was a fantastic display of the game, just because there was harmony. But wait until you have somebody who is just walking the field and they are not, or they are scoring in their own goal. Instead of scoring at the opponent, they're actually scoring in their own net. That's an aspect or an attribute of incoherent. Already, that means one of the team players is not moving toward the same direction as the team members. So for them, they're actually taking a different direction. Now, that's where we say that there is no harmony, there is no integration, and there's no alignment between them. So essentially, as you look at the MBO, then the MBO shapes the subordinate objectives. So as they shape the subordinate objective, then the objective of the subordinate also now shapes the personal development plan. Because depending on the objectives that I have, it automatically now also disorient my personal development plan. And that explains why some people will say that they have a lot of time. Others will say that, currently there's a lot of pressure, I cannot pursue this program. Currently the work involvement is too much, I cannot undergo this training, I cannot undergo this. All that now affects the personal development plan because of the objectives of the business. That's how that needs to be understood. So a certain level of processing or recycling is required while setting these objectives. There should be continuous interaction, consultation, and discussion among top-level managers, departmental heads, superiors, subordinates for setting these objectives. On the other hand, managers help subordinates to accept challenging objectives and push themselves to higher standards by showing their willingness to help them overcome obstacles and showing their confidence in the subordinates' ability. Now, this one is ideal because I know there are other situations where managers do not support the subordinates in doing that because they have their own reasons. There are managers who feel that superiors can really can stand out and outshine them and all that, which in my view is retrogressive because I know people, when you're a good manager, good leaders succeed because of the caliber of the people that surround them. But if you are surrounded by people who are not challenging your status quo, people who are not giving you different opinions, then you find that you remain with the same line of thought. And eventually you find that they're the same people who will be saying this, we have a manager or we have a leader who is not proactive. We have a leader who does not look at progression. We have a leader who does not think outside the box. But the moment, if you want to succeed, always give them that opportunity for them to give you opinions. They give you the right decisions. They give you the right options that you can take. And you will find yourself shining as you progress. But if you become so rigid and it's like you want to dictate, then it will limit your your growth and also your development. Step 4, revision of organizational structure. Revision of organizational structure. So in the revision of the structure, generally this is just the review of the structure. It means that because of the objectives, then you have to go back and look at how the structure is able now to report or is able now to gel with the MBO. So these objectives must be aligned with the structure. You cannot have a structure that does not support the management by objective, yet you expect to achieve that. You must ensure that they're in tandem, they're in support, they complement, and that way then your effective implementation will not be a big deal. So this change in the structure will occur because when the goals of each individual are set under the MBO, there has to be a significant change that occurs in the job description for various positions. This one you can bear with me. With the advent of COVID, there has been a lot of restructuring in organization. There have been a lot of restructuring in the work procedures and all that. Now that, as we've said, it has led to organizational structure change. The same way you used to monitor people when they were physically at workplace, because of COVID now, because of that, companies have changed. I know there are companies that have completely adopted a hybrid system where people work from home. In some instances, others work completely from home, others have to alternate and work from office and the rest. So that becomes a hybrid sort of structure. And why? Because it has been adopted to ensure that the objectives that have been set have to remain alive. Because you cannot just say, we are not going to undertake this approach. We don't want to have people working from home. Yet you have that capacity, yet you've already invested in technology. Many companies had to invest in technology for the past few months or 1 year. Now, if you invested heavily in that technology, then you cannot just wake up today and say, now, I think all those equipment that we procured, I think now they have to be brought back to the office and let people operate from the office. So that situation of now having to have invested in technology propelled you now to think differently, to change the structure on how you monitor that. You'll have to adopt a software that will be able to monitor what sort of work people are working on in their projects. You're able to monitor the level of project progress and all that. So this change, as I've said, will have a significant change of the job description for various positions, and it may become necessary to make certain changes or revision in existing organizational structures. Step number 4. So it's important that the charts and manuals should be suitably rectified to correctly show the changes brought about by the launching of management by objectives. Or the JDs should be clearly defined through their job description, which shows objectives, responsibilities, and also clarity on the relationship between one position to the other. Ladies and gentlemen, the next step, step 5, is matching objectives and resources. Now, we have situations where great objectives have been meted, but then we don't achieve those objectives. The reason being we don't have the resources. So there has to be, it's like there is a misalignment between the resources that people need and also the objectives that need to be achieved. So it's important that we should be clear in mind that to achieve these individual and organizational objectives, it's we have to create a balance between objectives and resources. Otherwise, you'll have your good documents just right there. So you have everything on paper, but when it comes to implementation, then you ask yourself, but we don't have finances, we don't have people who will champion this and all that. So you go back and now you ask yourself, when we are coming up with these objectives, how did we chart or how did we determine what sort of resources are required for these objectives to be achieved? The same way you've seen people recruiting or organization recruiting positions, then when the people have reported, then they start asking themselves, so this person, where will they sit? Or this person now they have reported, do they have the right or do they have the necessary resources? Do they have the computer, they have the laptop and all that? So in that case, that means that already the process of recruitment has failed, because by the time you plan to recruit, by the time you did the interviews, you had not factored in these resources. Now the person is reporting, and that's when you're asking yourself that where is the sitting area? Where is the other materials? Where is the equipment? So that's already a failure in terms of you've not matched your objectives to the resources. Because at the initial stages, when you're saying you want to recruit somebody or you want to recruit for this position, you must be alive to the fact that the resources are available. And if there's any new resources that are needed to be procured, they should be procured before you bring these people on board. Otherwise, you'll end up bringing on board resources that are not utilized. And if they're not utilized, then of course your objectives will not be achieved. So it's important that managers make sure that the objectives are appropriately matched to the resources. That's very, very crucial. Step number 6, conducting periodic progress and reviews. So when you conduct regular periodic reviews of progress made by the employees towards the set objectives, then MBO will make sure that these periodic reviews are conducted through various meetings with the superior and between the superior and the subordinates. Now, what happens in those meetings? In those meetings, you need to be reviewing the progress made. You'll be reviewing the challenges that have been experienced and what can be done to avoid those challenges. That's why we call it as a review meeting. When you're reviewing, that means you're looking at what you've done, where you are, and what is hindering you from getting to the next level. That's essentially what these reviews need to be done. So in order to conduct these reviews, then the checkpoints or standards are established about the progress of the subordinates. Generally, it's better if these reviews are conducted on a monthly or quarterly basis. I think we were asking ourselves yesterday and the other day that there are some progress aspects that you may not have to necessarily have to do it formally. There are things that you can point out informally so that you also develop this person progressively. It's like this person becomes your team member. And team members will not shy of in expressing their dissatisfaction whenever something wrong has been done. Team members, or even in life, if you have friends that will always say yes to what you say, that means those are not progressive friends. But you need people who can, in one instance, they can tell you, I don't think this decision that you've taken is correct. You need to change this. Okay, that's how we talk about constructive sort of feedback. We need people who can look at you and they can say, you have the potential, but you need to do 1, 2, 3 things. But they'll not just be looking at you and saying, okay, you have the potential, but I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to make you feel that I'm criticizing you. It's all about how you tell the person the truth about themselves, what they need to do, what they need to work on, what they need to improve on. So these goals that have already been defined, they have to be quantified. And I think I've already mentioned that they should be both at individual and group level. The reviews will be done, and these reviews will help to check the point at which whether people are on track or whether the changes have to be made in order to reach the defined goals. It's also crucial that certain challenges or problems that have been identified and issues have to be resolved during this review session, so that you don't wait until the end of the period for you now to point out an issue that will have been resolved instantly at that particular point. And this is where sometimes you find people saying that they don't like these review meetings because like people keep on, they just hold on something that you didn't do right. And this is the time now they're facing you and attacking you on that. So it now changes the narrative when it comes to these reviews, that the reviews are now not meant to correct, but they are now meant to punish or intimidate. Okay. So once you find yourself using that approach whereby it's like you're using the review meetings to intimidate or to criticize somebody in a way that shows that for them it's not about improvement, then just know that you've you've taken a different direction from the main objective of improvement in performance. I know we have our own little failings, but always whenever you're in that position, ensure that you execute your role in a manner that will enhance improvement, in a manner that will enhance people feeling fairness, in a manner that people will not feel discriminated, in a manner that people will not feel that you are exercising this because you want to intimidate other people. That should not be the case. So when you conduct these reviews, assume that you are the one the review is being conducted on. How will you react if the superior asks you questions in such a manner to show that they want to pull you down, they want to intimidate you, they want to show that you are a nobody? So that's the kind of questions that we always need to ask ourselves. If you are in those shoes, how will you feel? If you get the same kind of questions, you get the same kind of approach, how would you feel about it? Step number 7, performance appraisal. Now, generally in all organizations, we have these appraisals that are carried out, either informally or formally. Even on daily basis, you come today late and I'll tell you, you need to stop. You've been coming late and it's not right. Or you do a report and the report is incomplete. That's something I would mention right there and say, your report is not complete. You've been sending reports late. Those are things that we need to point out instantly so that we don't encourage them to continue. So you'll not send me a report that is faulty, then I have to wait for the appraisal meeting for me to raise that point. That way, then I'll have not assisted you to improve, but I'll be using that one as a component maybe to attack you. So usually these appraisals can be done, or this informal way can be done. And also we have now the formal the formal appraisals. But it is imperative that we constantly encourage informal corrections. When you do informal corrections, that's when you find that people feel that they'll change. Because if you tell me something, you point out something today, chances are that I will work towards changing it because I don't want you to remind me again that I've done the same. So that's where this aspect of performance appraisal will come in. Now, whether they're being done formally or informally, the formal ones will help to make sure that the in-depth measure and evaluation of an employee's performance is done because it's documented, it's indicated, the discussion, the way forward has been determined, and that way then it shows the progression, it shows what has been done and what else needs to be done. Of course, they will help to gauge the merit and level of achievement after giving analysis of the context and circumstances. But the nature of the business or the organization will determine the structure and the format of the review form. So different companies, different organizations have their different performance appraisal tools. I know there are those who use balance scorecard. I think it has also become popular. We have others that use the traditional ones. We have others that still use hard copy. Others have gone digital. All that is what informs the context, as we've said, and the format of the review document. So the following are the main aims of the purpose of conducting appraisals. I think these are just to make you alive to the fact that appraisals are meant to provide feedback regarding the actual performance. Also, they're able to identify the base for behavior. They also provide information to managers or leaders regarding future job assignments. That's when they'll be able to tell whether you have the potential for this position, you have the potential for growth. All that will be determined through these appraisals. And also, of course, they will help in making reward decisions or compensation decisions. Next, we have feedback. So this is the last step of the MBO process. And after the appraisals have been done and the evaluation has been done, what needs to be done is now to provide feedback to the high level of hierarchy. So that feedback is what will inform the subsequent decisions that will be taken in relation to generally the performance of the enterprise and also the performance of the individuals, and what sort of action points can be done. So this information that is provided will be used by top management to take decisions to make requisite changes in the program. These changes are also made to help in the shaping of the goals for the next year, and the whole cycle of MBO process is then repeated on an annual basis. So you come to the evaluation, then from evaluation you go back to setting of the same objectives, or the objectives again for the next year. I know right now companies are doing appraisals, or people are doing appraisals starting this month and next month. Now, when you carry out these appraisals, from these appraisals, then you set again the next objectives for 2022. So that is also what resonates with this MBO. So remember that as you do the appraisals, you submit the final report, then the final report also is submitted as a department, then the department generally now as an organization, what is your level of performance? From there, we have now the budgets for 2022. From those budgets, again, we have the targets, we have the objectives for each individual. So we are looking at how that at the organizational level is now being able to be cascaded into the department, from the department to the individual, and holistically now we look at the feedback that I've received as an individual and the feedback you received as an individual. What implication do this feedback have on the overall performance of the business? So by looking at that, then it now informs the strategic decisions that will be taken at the top level. That's generally how these steps will work. So the heart and core of MBO is to achieve when you focus on setting objectives and taking actions to follow these objectives and achieve them, which leads to results. So ladies and gentlemen, that is in regard to those characteristics, or in regard to those concepts. So allow me now to move to the challenges, or we call them as pitfalls in management by objectives. What are the challenges that await us when it comes to implementation of MBO? Now, one of the fundamental components of this MBO is that it's not a one-stop solution to all organizational problems. And I think I've said that, that you cannot copy what company A is using in your own company and assume that whatever is successful there will also be successful to your organization. So that's some of the things that we must be cognizant about. We must be cautious about it so that we don't end up thinking that if we adopt practices from other companies, they will definitely work for our company. That would be a very lopsided kind of thinking, because remember that these dynamics that exist in organizations are not, we can't say that they're the same. So because of the variations of these dynamics, then you must always assess the capacity of your organization to accommodate a particular policy or a particular objective for you now to succeed. Another pitfall is that many organizations turn to implementing MBO program to serve an instant solution to their problems. So you do it because, it's like things are burning. So you wake up and say, we need a strategist. We need, the company has not been performing. Can we call in a consultant to do restructuring and give us instant solutions to these problems? So once you do that, you find that the consultant will always justify why they have to do the consultancy, and they'll give you a host of recommendations on what needs to be implemented. And at times when you implement them, depending on the period of time, and maybe you want to do it instantly, then you find that it affects the achievement of what you want to achieve. So as we've said, it's not a one-off event, it has to be continuous. So it has to take a period of time for you to realize the results. However, such organizations do not realize that the MBO program requires careful planning and proper implementations. careful planning and proper implementation. So any MBO program cannot be implemented like it's a training. It has to be implemented within a whole, it has to go through a cycle. And from that cycle, now it's upon you to analyze it, assess it, and show to what extent has it been achieved. Another pitfall is that there are many problems that organizations may face while dealing with management by objectives. So other specific pitfalls are improper understanding of the MBO philosophy, inadequate planning, problems in setting objectives, rigidity due to lack of flexibility. We have also pressure and frustration of the subordinates. We also have short-term nature of goals. Sometimes we have bias in the qualitative way of approach. MBO also, as we've said, is not a one-off event, therefore it's time-consuming. It also increases paperwork if you're doing it. I know there's some organizations that have gone online. Also, there's also lack of follow-up, especially if you have more staff. And also we have other weaknesses. So let's start with the first pitfall: improper understanding of the MBO philosophy. I think when we started, we talked about one of the features of MBO was that it's a philosophy. And I was asking, what is a philosophy? And you gave that it's a belief that we hold. It is a practice that we have in the organization. What is it that drives us there? What is it that makes us to be who we are today? It's that philosophy. So one of the greatest problems by organizations is that MBO program has improper and incomplete understanding of the philosophy. So the philosophy is moving south, then the program is moving north. That way, then you will not achieve that. And that's at times we say that whatever you're speaking, can you ensure that you implement it? So that you don't speak that you're going to implement, yet down in your heart you believe that this thing is not achievable. So we have to look at, we were walking the talk. Being as a cliche, let's look at how do we walk that talk. If we are walking the talk of MBO, then we must have that collectiveness when it comes to implementation of the MBO, from the top leadership, be it the CEO, the general manager, the MD, to the senior managers, to the supervisors, to the subordinate staff. We need to be aligned with the philosophy of the business. That philosophy is what shapes our work, is what shapes our attitude. That's what shapes our efforts. That's what shapes our motivation. But in the event that we have this improper understanding of the philosophy, then definitely we will not achieve the objectives. Therefore, managers who lack this understanding when involved in practicing MBO do not actually understand as to what purpose the MBO concept serves. Also, they don't understand how to set objectives, how to review and appraise performance of subordinates. And generally, then they'll not be able to understand or analyze the results and the benefits of MBO to themselves, as well as the organizations. So this confusion and lack of understanding forces managers to behave and act in their old ways, and they're not able to appreciate this new philosophy. Hence, such managers will fail to teach the MBO philosophy to their subordinates. Yes, because as a leader, if you don't believe in the philosophy, then you have no audacity now to teach the same philosophy to the people. You cannot teach people a philosophy that you don't believe in. It has to start with you, because people have to see you leading that exemplary way. The approach that you're taking must be exemplified in the actions, so that based on that, people here. But you can't talk about them adopting a particular philosophy, yet you're also doing the opposite of the same philosophy. Because where will they learn from? Who will they look up to? Who will be their mentor? Okay, who will be their mentor when it comes to understanding or getting this approach? So as such, managers will fail as themselves because they lack initiative and they fail to excite others to participate. This problem brings forth the fact that although MBO appears to be simple to teach, but it's not easy to put in practice because of the leaders, because of the managers who do not profess the same. If you're not philosophizing the same, then there's no way you will have to convince other people that this is the right direction. People will not buy your idea that that's the way to go because they see that you don't believe in it, and therefore they will not buy that idea. Another problem is inadequate planning and efficiency of guidelines. Now, inadequate planning, as we said, I think I've already mentioned that you have a program you want to introduce, but you've not allocated resources, whether financial, whether human. Okay, you don't have the proper guidelines on who will monitor, to what period, when should that be monitored, who will be providing the corrective actions and all that. So you don't have those champions, then this MBO will not succeed, do not see the day. So people in an organization also face the problem of lack of proper guidelines to implement this program. It's therefore imperative that people implementing the program should be well aware about how to involve the personnel at all levels of management and obtain their support. Support becomes critical, awareness becomes critical, understanding becomes critical. I will not be comfortable participating in a process which I don't have an idea. I will not participate, I will not put in my full efforts in an activity which I don't understand how it's going to contribute to the whole organization, to myself, and also to the team. Therefore, it's important that employees who are supposed to set the goals in an MBO program should be provided with proper guidelines and guidance on setting the goals. They must be aware of and know the organization objectives and how they fit in these objectives. The other problem is setting objectives. And if you look at that diagram on your, I don't know whether it's on the right of your screen, we have setting objectives, you identify the tasks, you define success areas or the criteria, you assess the risks, you look at the action plan, you implement that action plan, you also monitor and review. So at the monitoring and review, then you go back to setting of the objective. So it becomes a cyclical process. And it's cyclical because it's also continuous. So it has to be, at the end of it, once you go to monitor and review, you go back to set objectives. You identify the risks like that. So you move again to the same cycle, then you go back to the whole process again and again. So whenever you get the objectives wrong, that means the whole program is founded on wrong what? Premise. So setting of objectives to be verifiable, which performance will be evaluated and assessed. Therefore, when we set objectives, then it becomes our most important task that we need to be cognizant of, and also ensure that we are able now to quantify the different achievement standards that needs to be considered. So as such, it is difficult to specify the parameters of performance and compare with other objectives. So people that are involved in setting of these objectives need to be properly guided. They should be trained properly on how to set objectives, how to indicate the behavior expectations, and also what are the results that need to be attained at the end of the process. So once we do this, then it enables us to provide the necessary guideline, the necessary support towards achieving the objectives. Another limitation or another challenge is rigidity due to lack of flexibility. Rigidity due to lack of flexibility. Now, when you talk about rigid, are we looking at the rigidity of the individuals? Are we looking at the rigidity of the organization? Are we looking at the rigidity of the culture? Or who are we looking at? Is it the program itself, or what does it entail? So generally, if the program is rigid, then of course, the drafters were also rigid. And of course, the implementers are also rigid. So we are looking at it encompassing the stakeholders within the same. This is due to the fact that goals may be set for a specific period of time, such as 6 months or the financial year. So depending on how you will monitor it and necessary corrective measures, that's when we can say that this process has been flexible or inflexible. That will be essentially what determines this. Okay, hence managers may not like to change this set of goals in between because of the fear of resistance from subordinates. However, this causes MBO to insert a level of inflexibility in the organization. So this is where we ask ourselves, to what extent do we allow some deviations or some alterations as we work? Are we the people that have already indicated that this has to be it, despite the dynamics that come along the way? Are we able to alter some things and change the course of action and justify that, or do we have to wait until the end of it so that we review it? And that's what I was saying is pertinent to performance management, because performance management being continuous, then we must constantly, at any given point, ensure that we provide feedback and we provide remedial action. But in this case, we are saying that some of the limitations of this MBO is that it becomes so inflexible in that people just, like, for example, if I have my target for the year, I'll stick to them. And at times, at the expense of interpersonal relationships, I'd rather meet my targets at the expense of being a friend to you. Because maybe the friendship that we may cultivate can affect my achievement of the same. However, you can understand that it does not serve any purpose for the manager to try and reach a goal that has been made obsolete or new revised corporate objectives. Another challenge is it raises pressure and frustration of subordinates. There are subordinates that will be frustrated because of the pressure of the job. It's like you're looking at a heavy burden. Look at that picture. This person is sleeping, but they have a burden. So you're sleeping, but in your sleep, there's a lot of burden in you. So it becomes a frustration because maybe you're not able to achieve these objectives. So it forces you now to work under a lot of pressure, and you get frustrated because things are not working out. You are seeking support, people are not supporting you. Or maybe you're making sales, clients are not buying and all that. So it becomes a burden to you. And therefore, this MBO, as we are saying, at times it raises pressure and frustration for the subordinates. Then, in fact, some critics of MBO actually increases pressure not only to the subordinates, but sometimes it creates frustration among managers. I don't know whether you agree with that or you disagree, but also it depends with whether you're experiencing the same, whether you have a similar concept in your organization or it's different completely. So one of the reasons for the increase in pressure and frustration is several organizations fail to implement the MBO properly. So the organization will not be able now to work properly in the current state, and also cannot go back and work with the old system. I know we have companies that invested heavily in some technology. That technology did not work. They had now to resort back to the old system. Then with the new change in management, again, now they had to adopt a new system and all that. So at the end of it, you find that the company has spent a lot of money. It has wasted a lot of time. It has trained people, but the system did not work. So you go back to the old system. As you go back to the old system, then you feel, no, we need to have another system. So again, you go back and start looking for another system. So that way, then it piles a lot of pressure now to the people that are taking part. So another reason for this pressure is when there are so much expectations of ambition. Sometimes we call it being overambitious. So the ambitions are high there, very high. But when you look at whether you can reach that point, it only requires we call them as miracles for you to get to that point. So that way, then you're putting a lot of pressure to people because these expectations cannot be realized because you didn't do a proper, smart approach to it. So you have high expectations, but then you find that it's not yielding what you anticipated. Therefore, it causes a lot of pressure and frustration within subordinates. And sometimes you've seen people throwing in the towel and they say, I think I cannot achieve this. Let me resign. People resign, they move on because of the pressure that they are not able to achieve. And usually it comes in because why you say that, we have to achieve this as a department. Therefore, if you don't achieve this, you'll have to pack and go. So you either toe the line or you have to leave. So that way then it actually breeds a lot of resentment in the people. Then we have also situations where we have short-term nature of goals. So when you have this short-term nature of goals, in a year, you find that people may not concentrate on them, or sometimes they achieve them and they feel that they have achieved. So at the end of it, you don't have achieved your main goals. So this can be extremely detrimental to the long-term development of the organization because it will also make it tricky for the strategic goals to be achieved. Otherwise, people will only focus on what they have achieved and believe that that is done. Yet they'll have other aspects that have not been attained. Another challenge is the bias. So as we've said that MBO should be verifiable and measurable, the bias will come in if people do not. Okay, Rose has written here something. As we go through MBO to help us to thoroughly understand MBO from. Okay, thank you. I think that's a comment for everyone from Rose Muteshi, for all the professionals here. So if we have that bias, then you find that managers may find themselves overutilizing the quantitative goals and force people or force these quantitative aspects in areas that are not applicable. And at times also they will tend to overlook other areas that are quantitative in nature and therefore lose out on those areas that are qualitative in nature and therefore lose out on those at the expense of the quantitative areas. And this is where, as I gave that example yesterday, is that people will be driven more by the results and forget about building a culture of teamwork. They'll forget about building a culture of interpersonal relations. They'll forget about being understanding to each other. So they'll only focus on their work and therefore it tends to affect that. Similarly also, as a supervisor or as a manager, then you'll be more driven by the results. So just looking at the numbers. Some people just say that for us it's about the bottom line. When we look at the bottom line, we don't care what you've done, but it's about the bottom line. So that way then you are restricting this person to only the results, and they'll do this at the expense of other aspects of the organization that may also be important, because at times there are certain features that are qualitative in nature, which through them now you can transform or you can be able to get into, you get your results better. Another challenge or another limitation that has been mooted is that it is also very time consuming. That to implement an MBO program, then you must have a lot of time because it has to be implemented at all levels of the organization. So it's very time consuming. It requires managers to hold several initial meetings to build confidence among subordinates in the new system. Again, the time consumption will also come in formal, regular progress review and review of the final sessions. Hence, it is very time consuming. Another significant one is the paperwork. Though nowadays, I think technology has enabled us to have these embedded in our systems. But generally, there will be that documentation, maybe just aspect of documentation, which we can say is a limitation. But if we have other organizations that still do paperwork, then you find that the paperwork will just be enormous. To be just huge, you see a whole file for an individual. Therefore, MBO inflicts a great burden of completing loads of paperwork to help people in the organization, such as managers, know what's going on in the organization through regular reports and data in writing. Lack of follow-up. And this applies to when you have so many people, when you have so many staff, you have to follow up with each individual. And if we are saying it's continuous, then that means every day you have to follow up on what is expected. If it's about daily tasks, if it's about weekly, that has to be followed up, and also corrective measures being issued out. And remember, you're also somebody's also looking forward to your reports. So as much as you are supervising some people here, but also somebody's also supervising you. So at the end of it, you're trying to handle these. At times, maybe you miss out on it, or sometimes you don't give feedback at the right time, then it affects the follow-up. But I think with the technology nowadays, the systems have enabled it easy, because as you keep keying, it automatically gives, once you input the threshold, it automatically gives the response to the person, and they're able now to see the level of performance and what needs to be done. Now, due to lack of follow-up procedures and guidelines in the MBO process, people may tend to easily fall prey to procrastination, where you say, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it this evening, I'll spend 1 hour. So you do that, the whole week is gone and you've not done that. At the end of it, you've appeared busy, but there's no progress. We can't really categorize that you've done something. So it's crucial that there should be proper follow-up happening between the manager and subordinates. And the manager must also get back his subordinates to the correct and appropriate time. And also subordinates should also be ready to inform the manager about what exactly has been accomplished. Then we also have what we call other weaknesses. Other weaknesses. Now, these weaknesses comes in, and I think somebody mentioned it yesterday. We talked about limitations that come with regard to the halo effect on the horns effect, which may affect, or it may threaten subordinates and also managers in terms of their relationship when it comes to working. So we have this other weakness, like over-enthusiastic or fanatical managers who may use MBO to threaten their subordinates with their consequences when the goals are not achieved. Somebody would say that I'll be waiting for you in the review meeting. That's when you'll know who I am. Or in the review meeting, that's when you'll know where you belong. I'll place you where you belong. So that kind of approach is what will negate the benefits that will have come with this MBO. Some of other pitfalls are managers may turn MBO into a fraud and start playing politics with their subordinates. Of course, they can do that. MBO program is used as a sort of punishment, of course, or whiplash to control employee performance. So somebody will still use it to punish you, which is misplaced. That should not be the case. Some of other pitfalls will be follows when managers not support you. It also leads to a tiring and long conflict in which subordinates tries to set the lowest possible targets for himself, while managers set the highest possible targets for themselves. I think there's also a comment here from Christine says, on follow-up, we sometimes have challenges because some supervisors may have very large teams and even up to 50 people. Yes, and therefore finding the follow-up tedious. Are the same tips for streamlining? Are there some tips for streamlining these? That's a question from Christine. That if you have many people, how do we streamline that? So let's keep interacting on that, but also request people to reply or reflect on that, on what Christina said, that if you have so many people, how do you deal with that situation? Because now you have to give feedback. So do you get overwhelmed if you have 50 people that you are supervising and you need to provide feedback at the right time? So generally, as we come to the end of this, some of the tips or the areas that we've looked at is, are you able to write down 2 SMART objectives that you want to achieve in your current financial year? What are the steps that you will take to achieve these objectives? Are these objectives in line with your organizational objectives? How do you measure the success of your efforts in reaching these objectives? Then let me come to this case study before we look at the comments and questions. So we have Keith Willman, who is a project manager at Galaxy Company. What can Keith do to help subordinates in setting their objectives? What part of case giving up is managerial control and power play in the MBO? So smart objectives, I think we looked at the 3 constituent aspects. We looked at smart objectives that have to be smart. Then we looked at the process, steps in the process. We've looked at all those in summary. Then we've looked at how do we make MBO effective and classification of objectives. I think we had them classified in 7 aspects. So we have the work objectives, targets, tasks, behavioral values, performance improvement, and developmental objectives. And also we looked at the 3 constituent processes: goal setting, objective, feedback, and participatory. And in summary, we looked at classification of people or things, competencies, what is the objectives, what are the performance, what are the parameters, what are the resources, what is the target, what are the tasks. And that is the end of the discussion today. So that marks the end of our session today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to me. I will now welcome questions, I think, and as I welcome questions, let's start by responding to the chat section. We have Christine was asking about the follow-up, that if you have very large teams up to 50, then how do you streamline this? Any response from the other professionals? You find yourself having many people, and how do you handle that situation? Or how have you handled it? Christine would be eager to hear your experiences. So you can unmute yourself and give a comment on that, your response on that. Anybody to respond to Christine's query? How do you ensure that you provide feedback to, if you're in charge of a big team, say 50, as described here by Christine? Anybody to respond to that? Let me see. Okay, are we there? Guys, are we there? And Daniel, Winnie, Rhoda. Or you've never had such situations where you have so many people, or many of you report to your supervisor. How does your supervisor handle that if you're many of you? I think that's the question that Christine was asking here. And she needs your perspectives, your take on that. Anyone? Okay, looks like people have not, or maybe they have not.
Wanted to attend.
Okay.
I think I would look for some key people in this group of 50. Some people who probably are ahead in terms of performance, and probably, have like their mentors, and of course discuss their weaknesses with them. Probably divide into 5 groups and get 5 junior managers, people who can support in this. And then of course they will be on the ground to understand the challenges. And then I'll be the overall person to discuss once I have consolidated from the 5 junior managers.
All right. Yeah, so that's a comment from Mary. Thank you, Mary, for that comment. Any other comment or observation? Okay, good idea. Delegation, yes. I think Christine has agreed with you that she needs to do delegation. Very important. Otherwise, you'll burn down yourself. Okay. So generally, I think when you have a big team, the best way to handle that, and I think also have coaches among the team, that's from Mary, use them to collect feedback, set regular meetings to discuss outcome and results, sure. So by delegating, that means it gives you the opportunity now to get to and identify who are the potential people, potential leaders and all that. So, and whenever, and I was giving that example of when people have to take leave. If you're supervising 50 people and you are on leave, then you will take charge of that. So you need to have some team members that can always step in that kind of situation, so that as you're trying to build the capacity, then it enables you to be able to get information across the different levels quite easily. So thank you very much, Mary, for weighing into that, and also thank you, Christine, for bringing that point on board. Also, there was a comment from Ross Muteshi who said that wishing all of you know all the knowledge, wishing off you knowledge and understanding as we go through this very important session of MBO. This will help us thoroughly understand MBO. Okay, that was a comment generally to all of us, that we need to be alive to the fact that if we are to implement MBO, then we need to have the right knowledge and also the approaches to ensure that we implement it. Good, so thank you very much. Any other question, any other comment? If there's no other comment, I want to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me, and for those who have also taken time to share their comments. Delegating a shadow for supervisor, the process of follow-up is easier from Ivy. Okay, I can see the comment from Ivy also in line to Christine's observation. Ross also says, I think it's important to have a manageable team to avoid time-consuming, enhance control, and move ahead with ease. Large organizations is like a baraza, which one can't control. I agree with you, because you have so much. If you have like 50 people, surely that will be, you won't be efficient at all. Delegating a shadow process of follow-up is easier. Yeah, I agree with that. Good. So, unless if there's any question, ladies and gentlemen, any comment? If no comment, I wish you a very successful week or midweek. And I wish you all the best, and see you again in other platforms. So this platform, as we share and grow our capacity in HR. So asante sana and be blessed. Thank you.